Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the heartland of the city of Gold Coast and to Robina Library. My name's Karen Phillips, and it's my great privilege to spend a Wednesday evening with so many beautiful Gold Coasters on a journey that I certainly feel you are just going to love. The twists, the turns, the celebration, the sadness and the beauty that lives with our very special guest speaker this evening. Briony Benjamin is joining us all the way from the Gold Coast because she usually resides in Sydney, but she happened to be here, and so City of Gold Coast Libraries were able to snatch her and celebrate this really beautiful opportunity of the launch of her book. So to hold a live event, I think we're the envy of every other library in Australia, I have to say. And we were down at Eleanor this afternoon and we had a beautiful capsule event down there. So tonight's a little bit larger in numbers. And we're just so thrilled that we can celebrate a really unique and special experience with you. And one that's not just about books, but about the person who created, who had the thought behind what might want to be shared and might be needed at this really important time in our lives. And not just for the journey that Briony's gone on, but certainly for the journey that so many of us, so many of Australians, and certainly so many right around the world are going through. And that's not just with a wellness or a change of life journey, but also the challenges that many are facing around the world right now. So I hope that you're going to enjoy this evening. Actually, I don't need to hope. I know you're going to enjoy this evening. So make sure you're comfy. You can take photos, of course. You can take some video as well. We just ask that you turn your phone off. Should we have the need to escape quickly, we'll head out through the door and to the right. If you should need a little break during the evening, the bathrooms are just right round the corner to your left, both gentlemen and ladies. And I think we're ready to begin with a story that is going to enthrall you all. But to begin the journey tonight, we're doing something a little bit different, and it actually celebrates the true belief of libraries, and that is here on the Gold Coast, libraries are about a resource centre, and not just the beautiful books and the pages that we turn and that we're able to borrow, and for most in the audience bring back in a timely manner, not that we're looking anywhere, but also those online opportunities as well, the e-books and the resources now. And so libraries really are about connectivity, and I believe they're certainly the fabric of our city because they give us the chance for connection, both within our minds and our thoughts, also through the pages, but certainly the computers as well, but really very much so they give us a communal space. And I think that a city is bound by its value of community and certainly that beautiful tapestry of network. And the library is the beautiful place for that. And we've seen that during COVID, and the numbers swole during COVID, as you can imagine, because so many people wanted online resources, both for work, both for their time at home, both for their learning, and certainly both for their relaxation. And I think that we showcase tonight that libraries can be used for so much more. So to start the journey tonight, we're going to take an online look of just a little taste of where Briony comes from. Please enjoy.
I do feel scared.
So what do you do when you get the worst news of your life? You lose your breath. You can't believe this is happening. You know instantly who the most important people in your world are. You write down their names and you call them one by one. You have a shower and cry harder than you've ever cried before. You think you might break in two. You don't try to understand. You just accept the roller coaster you're on. You call in the A-team and you go get mani-pedis.
So relaxing.
You have dinner parties, breakfast parties and couch parties. And you hold your family and friends and tell them how much you love them, like you always should have. You start taking pregnancy vitamins and injecting yourself with hormones. You get overwhelmed, then you get defiant. You roar, I will beat this.
We're kicking it in the gym!
You start to realise the world is full of extraordinary kindness.
A little video from all of us.
You are a gladiator. We love you, Briony. Kick cancer in the butt.
You decide you're going to make this journey as fun as it can be. You make a new vision board. You go get your hair done so you can enjoy it while you have it. You keep your head above water and you keep swimming. You get those eggs put on ice and your mum holds your hand every step of the way.
I knew I'd have lots of eggs.
You go to more hospital appointments than you ever thought possible. Your support crew sets up camp.
Got a nail parlour going on here in
You get sent a lucky bug from a 4-year-old who thinks it will fix you and it feels magical.
Auntie Briony, we love you.
You go wig shopping with a big lump in your throat. You hang out with Enzo and take thousands of photos of him. He stays glued to your side. You lose your hair, cut it off. Lie on the bed and take silly selfies with your sis. You journal your heart out. You smile at everyone you pass, even when you feel sick, because it could be so much worse. You learn to loom, go a bit loomy. You realise that doctors and nurses are angels on earth.
How good is that?
You feel grateful every day you wake up not feeling sick. You feel grateful just to be here on this day, to get one more day. You feel grateful for your body. It's the only place you have to live and it's doing its best. You sob when all your friends go and donate blood on your behalf. You make videos and you get up to mischief. You make your own sunshine and you keep going on. Then you get the news. You're in remission. You can't believe it. You're out the other side. You don't quite know what's next or how you feel about it all, but you feel grateful that you got a wake-up call. That you get one life. It's short and fleeting and wonderful. So what would you do if you got the worst news of your life today? Don't wait. Go do it now. Because you only get one life.
Isn't that powerful? And that's just the beginning, ladies and gentlemen. I know it's so incredibly heartfelt. And before we welcome to Briony to the stage, I'd like to pay respects to our traditional owners on the land in which we meet today, the Yugambeh people. They took with them the stories of their lives, of their forefathers and mothers, and they've taken them through now from their elders past, present and emerging. As we do here in the libraries right across the Gold Coast, we are sharers of stories, of lives. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the one and only, the absolutely incredible Briony Benjamin. Come and join us. We all feel like, don't we, after seeing that, I've seen the audience go, oh my gosh, now they just want to touch you because you're real. Welcome to the Gold Coast. We know you've been staying here with your mum and dad, and your mum is here in the audience where she's wished off to. She said, look, Mum, stand up for a minute. I mean, there's nothing like a great... Is your dad here tonight?
Yeah.
Where's he? Oh, hello,
Hi,
Daddy.
Dad. Oh, yeah.
Oh, look at them. I want to start with this because I think, you know, relationships, and you talk in your book about the A-team and bringing them together, but Mum and Dad, what does it feel like having them in the room today, this evening, listening to you, watching you, being so incredibly proud of you? It's something that you probably thought you'd never do, and that is create a book.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's always awesome to have my number one fans in the room. They have just been so remarkable during this entire experience that I've been through, and really were the reason that I got diagnosed in the first place, because they were just on my case. You know, I'd been feeling really unwell for about 12 to 18 months. And I kept just getting dead ends when I went to the doctor, and so I sort of had just resigned myself to the fact that maybe this is what being an adult feels like. You just feel awful and tired and stressed all the time. And they were just, you know, persistently on my case, getting me to investigate more things and go back. And my dad's actually a vet, so with that knowledge combined with my mum's persistence, they ended up calling up my GP and saying, we're really worried that this could be lymphoma, a blood cancer, because, you know, the symptoms are all there and it's just not adding up. And so it was really thanks to Mum and Dad that I ended up getting that diagnosis and getting it when we did.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about that period of your life, and you'll hear some of the words tonight, which I think are really interesting. As we've talked a little bit today, we've had this great opportunity of connecting and sharing, and I've been really inspired by the choice of words that Briony uses when she talks about this period of her life, journey opposed to, you know, time of your life, etc., and what that looks like. So you'll hear a little bit this throughout, but I want to start off with, when you weren't feeling well, I've got to tell you, most of us don't feel that great. You know, most of us are exhausted, most of us are fuzzy in the head, most of us are working too hard. I mean, what made you feel like you weren't your normal self?
Yeah, I mean, I was just feeling, I could just never get on top of my tiredness. I'd nap on the weekend and I just never felt then good. I was feeling really like I would get sick quite easily. I just felt like I was a little sponge for disease and bugs and colds. And and just I was starting to have night sweats at night, on and off. And my doctor wasn't particularly worried about that. She said, oh, that could be hormonal or whatever, but they sort of started increasing in severity. I was having, drenching night sweats night after night, waking up, my pajamas were wet and I'd have to change them and my sheets were, wet. And so that was obviously what really alerted my mum and dad. And we'd had a really beautiful family friend, Gary, pass away from lymphoma many years ago. So we were clued into the symptoms because of that, but otherwise, and I've heard this from a lot of young women that I've met since that have been diagnosed with a blood cancer or another cancer, it just keeps getting put down to other things. So I really, by the end, I was getting a diagnosis from my GP that it must just be stress and overwhelm, and I was feeling anxious at work, which I just didn't really connect with me because I thought I've had far more stressful jobs previously. I actually really loved the job I was in at the time at Mamamia Women's Network. And so it was just, it didn't quite feel right. But, and I've since learned for the women in the room, it actually takes a lot longer for women to get a cancer diagnosis than men. And we're far more likely to have our symptoms ascribed to mental health issues. Yes. So if you know something is wrong with you, I say to everyone now, I write about it in the book, you're actually the world's leading expert on your body. And so if someone's telling you that you're fine and there's nothing up, but you just know that it's not feeling good, I say to everyone now, just have a dash of hypochondria about you, just a dash of the man flu. Because you do know. And so I think if I had my time over again, I wish I could go back to myself from, 3-4 years ago and have found the courage or the voice just to really be a bit more persistent and advocate for myself. And, said something to my doctor like, this is really having a big impact on my life. I need you to understand, I'm in a lot of pain. I'm not sleeping well because I'm waking up, feeling this way. I need another option here, or who else can I go and see? What would you do if it was you? And I think some of those questions, it's hard to have the language sometimes because you just go, okay, all right, well, nothing's wrong. I'll come see you in a few months, I suppose,
Well, and I think as well that, and I mean, we certainly support the medical fraternity and doctors as such, but I think that many of us take what they say and think, well, they know better than us. And yet the symptoms you're now explaining tonight, many of us would say, well, that is not normal to be having night sweats and changing your nightie twice a night and to be feeling quite that blurry, particularly at your age, because you kind of, you're still on the uprise of life. So and you look absolutely sensational. So kind of like this highly spirited, beautiful young lady. Why would you feel like that? I want to take you back a few steps, if I may, though, and say, because we want to know why you did the book. And I think that, we all think, they always say if you come to a library, there's a book in every person. And we think we all have a story to tell. And, you're at a dinner party and someone says, you should write that down and write a book sometime. Well, books weren't really your thing, even though I'm going to say you're an incredible wordsmith.
Oh, thank you.
Is that originally, what did you want to do when you grew up? You didn't necessarily want to be a journalist or an author, did you?
No, well, I think when I was really little, I thought I'd be Prime Minister because that seemed easy. And then I saw the first female Prime Minister and I thought, oh my gosh, she got a hard time, didn't she? And then I remember I was passionate, probably from growing up in a veterinary practice and being around animals all the time. I had just a love of nature and the outdoors, and I remember all I wanted to do when I grew up was come up with a machine that could clean the water and one that could clean the sky. That was I was a pretty nerdy, cool kid. But yeah, that's what I wanted to do. And even though I was quite a shy kid, actually, I remember in grade 3 working up the courage to go and see the principal to ask if we could have a tree planting day at school because I really wanted to, the gardens to look nicer around the school. And so there was sort of a strong environmental bent from a young age. And then, I suppose I always loved theatrics and, we did a lot of drama. Actually, my beautiful primary school drama teacher, is next door at the Eisteddfod at the moment, still teaching her gorgeous students.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I've seen all the little kids tonight, and they're coming out, and they've got all their little crowns on, and they're so excited because that expression of self is so very important, isn't it?
And I think it was such a wonderful thing for me as such a shy child to, you know, with the encouragement of my parents, and my mum would do speech and drama with us all the time. Yeah, it was a really wonderful thing. But yeah, so, and then, you know, out of school I went and did a commerce degree, which is a logical, you know, lead into film, obviously.
Well, hang on, you were an A-grade student, so I think that for most A-grade students, and you love finance as well, so that's unexpected for a young woman. I mean, now we're kind of into STEM and promoting science and, you know, that side of opportunities for women. But even given your young age, there's kind of that thought that that was unusual then to go into those areas.
Yeah, I mean, I'd always been entrepreneurial, I think, growing up in a family business.
Yes.
And, you know, my first business, which my sisters still never let me forget, was making them donate their toys into my charity, which we would then sell. And then they couldn't get their toys back, they realised at some point. So they're like, no, the money's now going to charity. And anyway.
But you're the big sister of twins.
Twins,
so
yeah,
3
twin
girls in
girls.
your family.
Yes.
And I think that's important because we're going to come back and talk about the A-team. But you're 18 months older than them, so you're
Yes.
very close, I expect.
Yeah, we are really close. They're kind of chalk and cheese, the twins. They're
Yes.
fraternal, and but they're very funny, the two of them. And yeah, don't let me get away with anything. It's nothing like the grounding influence of siblings, is there?
No, that's so true. So now go back to uni. So you did that course to start with.
Yes.
How did you end up in production?
Yeah, so I did a commerce degree, and while I was doing that, I was at Johns College in Brisbane, and the whole time I was directing the plays and running the Choral Fest, and became the cultural convener at the college. And yeah, my first ever film I made, I was in the final year of my finance degree, and Telstra was running a little mobile movie competition. And I actually made it about Mudgeeraba. You had to make it on your own town. So I made it on Mudgeeraba, where I grew up, and made this short little 1-minute film. And it actually ended up winning and getting screened at the opening night of the Sydney Film Festival. And so they flew me down to Sydney, and I was watching it up on the big screen. I was like, well, this is more fun than spreadsheets. I want to do this. Yeah, this is pretty cool. Yeah, so I think that... but yeah, I think when I was studying commerce, and I got really, you know, I always had been interested in the environment, and I started studying a number of subjects around carbon trading. And this was at the time when Kevin Rudd was in and was about to bring in an emissions trading scheme, and they were like, well, if we bring this scheme in, we've got no way of actually rolling this out. So they were making and I got really passionate about that and learning about carbon trading. But I thought, I don't actually want to be a carbon accountant working out carbon accounts. I think the way that I could use my skills is to, through video and through film. I was really interested in that as a medium to connect with people, you know, and help them understand or connect with bigger topics. So, yeah.
And a lot of the work you've done then is not only just what we would consider local, but national, and obviously you've had lots of international success as well with that productions. So when you started off in the environmental angle, did you continue on that line for a period?
Yeah, so I spent most of my uni film days making short films about renewable energy and plastic in the ocean and all these sort of things. And straight out of uni, landed a job working on a big sci-fi feature film. I was offered one working on, you know, something in about the rainforests and the Borneo, you know, and the orangutans, and I probably should have done that, but I went, oh, a big flashy film with Ethan Hawke in it, that sounds fun. So I took that job, and 3 months into it, I got fired actually, and I thought my career was over. I thought I'd never get another job ever again. But, you know, it wasn't actually very aligned with what I wanted to do and the stories I wanted to tell. So I ended up, I packed up my bags, drove up to Sydney, stayed on a friend's couch for a week, and then within a week's time I had landed a job at a production company that did all of the content for World Wildlife Fund, the Climate Council, Get Up, all these really interesting campaigning organisations that were also very bold storytellers. So they were happy to be cheeky and a bit irreverent and, you know, take a risk with their storytelling. And I was like, oh, I found my happy place. This is amazing. So that was sort of like a 2-year training ground in making digital content that could reach big audiences and use humour to do it. And that's when I started to really, I think, hone the craft of reaching audiences with impactful messages, but doing it with fun.
And having a touch point, because I think you can create anything that's a medium, but you have to find the heart or the mind. You must touch them in either, or preferably both. And obviously you were very effective at that, because you then got an opportunity with Mamamia.
Yeah, so a role came up as the head of video at Mamamia Women's Network. Does anyone know Mamamia? Like, yeah. So not the musical, unfortunately. Sometimes people get really excited when I say that, and they can, oh no, they're thinking the musical. Like, what role were you? But yeah, it's a digital platform. Mia Friedman was, you know, the youngest ever editor globally of Cosmopolitan, still is. I think at 24, she was the editor-in-chief. She did that for 10 years. She was in there saying, we've got to go digital, we've got to go digital. And none of the magazine bosses wanted to hear it. So she sort of beat the whole magazine game to digital and set up this platform for women. There's about 100 women that work there now. And this role came up as the executive producer of video. And I thought, that sounds really fun and I'd really love to do that. I'm going to have to really pitch hard to get this job, but I think I'm the right person for the job. So I kind of went in there and said, I just think you're such a fun, irreverent brand, and we could, you know, reach the whole world. Like, it doesn't need to be nationally focused. The sort of content you could make, global themes that affect women. And so that was kind of my pitch to them. And so Mia said, yep, you've got the job, and your job is to make us famous for video. And I was like, okay, cool. How do I do that? Oh, I have no idea. But I didn't tell her that. And actually did this thing. I had this amazing team of producers, four women that worked in my team. And so I said, well, we're going to do pilot season, which is code for, I don't know what we're going to do, but we're going to play and figure it out. Yeah. And so we did pilot season, and 6 weeks in, we cracked a viral video that did 20 million views and sort of traveled all around the world. And then from that, they sort of just were like, all right, off you guys go play. And once again, it was like being in a video lab. And so I started to get really a good sense of what does go viral and what connects with people. And for starters, so when I sit down to think up a piece of content, I always think firstly from the perspective of that audience member. Yes. And I start with, why would someone share this video? Because you can't go viral unless people are going to share for you, right? Unless you've got millions of dollars to put behind your video, you've got the crowd has got to share it for you. And people share because they might, you know, for a whole different lots of reasons. It might be to make their friends laugh and to be, you know, look at me, I found this cool, funny video. I'm very on the trend, you know. Yes. Or they might share it to say, oh, this is so inspiring, you've just got to see this. Or, you know, I'm sharing this, you know, Guardian article to make me look at this important issue that I'm across, you know. So I think about the psychology of why people share. And people also share to connect with other people, right? And the interesting outcome from the video that I made about my cancer journey that I hadn't anticipated was I had so many cancer patients reach out to me and say, thank you so much for making this video, because I feel like you've articulated my experience word for word, and I can now share that with my friends and family, and they have a proper sense of what I actually went through, rather than just, you know, because I know for me, I came up to the Gold Coast during treatment, was at the fabulous Gold Coast Hospital, and then I went back to Sydney to my friends down there, and, you know, you catch up with people after 9 months away, and it's like, so how are you? What was it like? And how can you convey that experience in a 5-minute conversation, you know? But that does the heavy lifting. And so you're like, watch this, that was kind of like that. Yeah.
But it's so true, isn't it? Because I think when we've gone through a difficult time, and many of us have, whether it's a family breakup, whether it's an issue with a child, whether it's illness, whether it's the mental health toll of COVID, is that someone will say, how are you? And the first couple of times you share it with them, it's okay. But after like the 15th time, you want to poke them in the eyes and say, you know, here's a piece of paper, can you read how I really am? And so by conveying it in this way, you're able to actually share the highs, the lows, and everything in between of an actual experience as such. Can you take us back? And I don't want to kind of focus too much on the day, but I think it's really
That's
important
fine.
because you've told us you weren't, you didn't feel right in your heart. You're at Mamamia. I'm going to say it's probably the best moment in your life. You've got this really cool job. You're doing exactly what you want. Life is pretty good. I mean, how old were you then?
31.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
31, life is grand for all of us that can remember. Those who haven't got there yet, God bless you. Is that, it's a great time in life. So
Yeah.
you went in because your dad, and how fantastic, really pushed hard. And I think you mentioned to me as well that your doctor probably thought you were a little bit, princess-like, going and
Yeah.
taking your parents to the
Yeah,
doctors
well,
with you.
it wasn't the GP I was seeing at the time, but Mum and Dad were passing through Sydney and they said, we're going to come to the doctor with you. And I was saying that, I think this doctor was sort of going, who is this millennial princess with her, parents at 31 coming in to see me? What's going on? I think he was a bit judgy or a bit, but they were just so worried that, Mum, sort of really insisted on coming. So.
And from there, you went in, and could you explain a little bit about, blood cancer? Because I think that many of us hear the big C word and think, okay, well, it's in your bones, or, it's a tumour, it's breast cancer, as many of us have heard, or it might be prostate cancer. But, the stats are actually very high.
Yeah, and actually today is the start of Blood Cancer Awareness Month, coincidentally. Blood cancer is actually the second most common form of cancer that's diagnosed in Australia, and it's also the second highest cause of deaths in Australia. So 50 Australians will be diagnosed every day with blood cancer, and sadly 15 will die every day of blood cancer. So it's more common than we think, and actually the lymphoma is the most common cancer in young people. So, which once again, it feels so frustrating when I speak to all the young women and men I know that have been through lymphoma, that have had such a hard time getting diagnosed, because it's not like it's not a common thing. We just don't have the awareness yet. So I really hope the sidebar of this book and, these sort of talks is, even if just, a few people are then switched on to the symptoms a bit more. What were we, where were we
We're talking
going
about the day. So when you're,
Yes.
when you go in and have more tests, and what does that look like?
Yeah, so basically my parents insisted I got referred to a haematologist, a blood specialist, went in to see her, and she said, yeah. And she was actually the first medical person to say to me, so this is having quite a big impact on your life. And I said, yeah, actually it is. And no one had really said that or acknowledged that till now. So it's something I say to people as well. Make sure you find a doctor that you feel is really taking your pain seriously.
Yes.
She basically said, let's get a CT scan done. I did that. That came back with big enlarged lymph nodes sort of all through my chest area. A lot of people with lymphoma or blood cancer will get a lump, like a visible lump on their neck or around or on their chest, but mine was all hidden in my chest. So, and I think she probably knew by that point something was up, but wanted to keep me calm. And she said, oh, look, we're just gonna, we can see a lymph gland in your armpit. We're gonna get a little biopsy of that. And then from there, we can know. So I came in for the biopsy. She said, come back in 2 weeks, we'll give you the results. So I thought, okay, fine. If it was bad, they would call you, right? Like if you had cancer, they'd let you know.
Yeah,
but no, because they're busy and they've got, a whole lot of people coming in and out. And so Mum insisted on flying down to be with me for that appointment. And I said, oh, Mum, don't worry. Like, I've got a big day at work. I'm racing straight in. Sophie Monk's coming in. It's a really big day. And I sat down in the appointment, and my specialist, Dr. Bosco, just said, and she was so beautiful. Oh, she had the most beautiful manner. And she just said, I'm really sorry, but the results are back, and it is Hodgkin's lymphoma like your parents were worried about. And so that looks like we're just going to clear your next 3 to 6 months and start you on a course of chemotherapy. And once I heard the word chemotherapy, I'm thinking, oh gosh, this is not good. And so the only thing I could think to ask was, I just said, to gauge how serious it was, I just said, am I going to lose my hair? She said, yeah, you are, but it will grow back. And that was that whammy kind of sucker punch moment where you just suddenly, it's a bit of an out of body experience, and my first thought was just, oh, she's going to tell me any minute this is someone else's results, and she's just mixed them up. And so I kept waiting for that. And then you realise that moment's not coming. And I remember Mum just grabbed my hand, and we sort of looked at each other in disbelief, and we called Dad and put him on speakerphone, and we were like, okay, well, what next? And I think in that very first moment, like, I don't remember much from that consult, but what I do remember is she said, I don't want you to get too far ahead just now. You're not going to Google it. We're not going to worry about treatment, chemo, anything. We're just going to think about the next 3 steps. And that's a blood test, a lung test, and getting you into an IVF clinic tomorrow morning, which was another whole shock. But I thought that was such good advice, and I really tried to, I Googled it the next day, but it gave me that first day of just going, I'm not going to think about that yet. And it was something I tried to do the whole way throughout treatment, and still now, if I'm getting a bit flustered or overwhelmed, come back to that, okay, what are the next few things I need to do? I'm just going to think about those.
And in that day, for many of us, we haven't had that experience, so to even try and imagine it. But you're supposed to be at work. You had Sophie Monk coming in, who, is an Australian celebrity. Pretty exciting. There was work to be done. You're the leader of your team. In that moment, do you phone work and say, look, I've got a headache, or I locked my keys in the car? And
I've got a really good excuse to not come in today, guys.
Because you're kind of saying, who do we phone first? And as we talk about the A team, who are those people that are so connected to your life that you need to share the news first and before it seeps out? But because of your role, you couldn't really pull a sickie for the day or the rest of the week and then let them know a few days later. You, I would imagine, had to make a choice there and then.
Yeah, so I think, I wouldn't recommend it, but it's a very good way to figure out who's really important in your life. And I remember just writing out a list then and there of everyone I needed to let know before. I didn't want, my most important people hearing it on the grapevine. And, my sisters were 2 of those people, but one was in London and one was in Canberra, so I wanted to make sure there was someone near them because they were away from family. But I think my boss was probably the second person I called, and she was amazing, and she just said, oh, don't think about it again. Like, there's nothing for you to worry about here. We're taking care of everything. And it's funny, isn't it? Like, all those things that on your urgent, important to-do list for that day suddenly are just like nothing matters. All the things that mattered don't matter. And all that, I write in the book, really the only things that I thought about were like, how long do I actually have left on this planet? What do I want to do with that time? And who do I want to spend it with? Which are probably good questions to ask ourselves every day, really, because nothing's a given, but that was the thing that was most present that day.
And in saying that, I think, as you rightly say, there's a lesson for all of us, wherever we are in our life journey, is that what do we choose this life to be? And in those moments, people will say that it flashed in front of them what was the most important, what did they want to do with their lives, and yet so many of us just bundle along day by day going, is this as good as it gets, thinking we're here for eternity. But for such a young woman, you had some pretty big choices you had to look at and some decisions to make, whether you stayed in Sydney, whether you moved up here, who would undertake the treatment, what life would be like. When did you come up with the idea that you were going to film it? Because for many people that go through this type of experience, is they may say journaling is a really good, cathartic experience to undertake on a daily or weekly basis. But to actually say, right, well, we'll just get the video out, and what does that look like, or what will it become? And we can look back and say, well, that makes sense now. But in that moment, because you didn't wait to halfway through, you didn't kind of say, well, my hair's grown back, but this was the journey. We're in those 3.5 minutes, and we're looking at the journey from it appeared like almost day 1 or 2 to actually the other end, the other side.
Yeah, well, it was actually on the very first day, my partner at the time, he said to me, I think, it would be really great if you went and just documented how you're feeling and put it down on video. And I said, I just can't. I really don't feel like doing that. And he said, I really think you should. And I was like, I really don't want to. And he said, I really just, last time I'll say it, but I think it would be really great if you could. And so I did. And so that very first shot in the video where I'm saying I do feel scared, that was the first day. And I just went up to my room, shut myself in, and just, for about probably 10, 15 minutes, just brain dumped everything that I was thinking. And and then my beautiful friends pulled together and they bought me a lovely little leather satchel, and they bought me a microphone and a little gimbal, so wherever I went I could film and record. And I think it was really cathartic to do the video journaling. I became really religious about journaling as well during chemo. But just to have a place to speak it out loud and maybe talk out things that you don't even feel comfortable saying to your family or friends. You could just get it out. And another friend said to me, he just said, just film it and you don't have to do anything with it. Like, there's no pressure to use any of it, but you can't go back and get it. So just film. And I thought that was really great advice. And so I did. I just started getting it. And I find it amazing when I go back and look through some of it now and you're like, wow, did that happen? You know, we forget so much, don't we, of what we do day to day. And to be able to see that and relive it. And I think too, it just gave me a bit of a project. It gave me a bit of a distraction, kept me at arm's length a little bit from what was happening. And it's funny to go back and look through some of the footage now and, you know, I'll see myself going, oh, I'm sitting there having chemo and I'm like, can you turn the camera around that way? And just, you know, directing my mum or my sister or, it was a nice distraction,
But the distraction as well as this A-team piece that you talk about and you really do target in your book as well as saying you need to have the right people around you. I mean, we hope that we will know who the right people are, but did extra A-team or A+ team people come around you that provided support?
That's a really good question. I think, you know, some friends go from friends into super friends. They just really step up. Some people, you know, don't really know what to do or are a bit of a loss as what to do. So I do write in the book about if you're someone supporting or if you're, you know, even a distant sort of friend, what you can do. But for me as well, it was the kindness that came from the most random places that was so touching. I had a girlfriend who had a friend who I'd never met, Roxy, and she sent me a book and a card to say, I just wanted you to know that people that don't even know you are sending you love and cheering for you. You know, just such a kind, thoughtful gesture. And I write about in the book as well this concept of the ring theory. I don't know if anyone's heard of it before, but it's basically the idea that when you're going through a crisis, you are bang in the middle, and then there's a ring around you, and that's your A-team, your immediate family and friends, and then there's another ring, and that's your acquaintances, and then there's another ring, so that's, you know, your barista and your Karen from Pilates, you know, like a big group. And there's only one rule, and it's that you got to send comfort into the smaller circles and you dump out. So you would never say to the person going through cancer, I'm really worried you're going to die and I'm going to be alone. But you could say that to someone in a bigger circle. Or, you know, if you were talking to the mother of that person, you wouldn't say, oh gosh, this must just be awful for you, know, but you could say that to a bigger circle. So I think that was a really good, simple rule, but it's amazing how many people don't get it, you know.
But I think that this is so timely, is that the way you're speaking now is almost like us talking to people perhaps in lockdown in Sydney and Melbourne and other parts of Australia, is that, you know, we're all doing okay. Our lives, let's face it, are pretty good. And yes, there are some really tricky, challenging times for people in business, people in families here in our own city. And then you compare it to Sydney or Melbourne and we're almost like, oh, they're getting used to it now. But I remember when I spoke to my niece for her birthday, she's 16 and she's in Melbourne and it's her second lockdown birthday. And she was so buoyed and joyous and beautiful on the phone to me, and then I texted her mum afterwards and said, you're such a super mum. You know, God bless you for everything you do and a cake, and you've just, you know, made her birthday so special, and she seemed so happy. And the text came back and it broke my heart saying she seems so happy. But it's been a really hard day for her. And as an auntie, I almost died thinking, here she is looking like one thing, and yet on the inside she's breaking because she's going through an experience that, frankly, you know, I can't understand, because here on the Gold Coast, although we've had short moments, and last year, we're not living their experience at the moment.
And for people in Victoria and Melbourne, I mean, it's just been relentless, hasn't it? They're in their sixth lockdown, and now, as of today, extended till nearly the end of September. Like, it's just so challenging. So, yeah.
And so I feel that in some ways in the reading of the book, which of course I've done, and mind you, I have to be very excited because the book that I received from you, unlike coming from a bookshop, it came from the Gold Coast Libraries. And it had its barcode on the front, and then I realised in a moment I had to give it back. But it arrived at my office door, like, read this before Briony arrives on the Gold Coast. And it was like a glittering moment of joy, because the exterior of the book is just so joyful and it's so happy and tactile that you actually want to touch it, you want to open it, you want to read the pages, and then you realise, and someone arriving here tonight, one of our guests said to me, you know, they have a very special friend going through blood cancer at the moment,
goodness.
and in treatment, and they said, you know, they really think it'll be good for that person to read the book. And I said, well, it's not even so much about reading, because there are touch points in this book you can just open and find a moment of joy, of celebration, of remembrance, of actually just something that gives you a glimmer for yourself or someone else. And I think that during these times, we all need this. And I've said to you earlier today, I really feel like I need to get 2 helicopters full of these books and just, you know, arrive in Melbourne with a megaphone saying, you know, stay in your homes, the care package is arriving, and kind of have these books arrive on the streets, because people would just scramble to take them, because we're all after moments of hope.
Can I get you to run the
joy.
marketing campaign next time round? Just like,
It'd probably be the one moment someone comes out of their house hit by Briony's book. But I think that, but it is, you know, we want to create this connection. But for you, how did it end up in a book? Because I understand through your background that there could be a video or a film, or it might produce in that way. But to actually then translate it into something that is the written word, how did that come about?
yeah, so that video, it went up on Mamamia. Mia Freeman threw her full support behind it, and as a result of that, the video went viral. And one of the people that saw that video was a publisher called Kelly Doust from Murdoch Books in Sydney. And she just reached out on Instagram and said, I've just seen your video and I'm bawling my eyes out, and I've sent it to everyone in my family, and I'd just love to talk to you about a book. Now, this was about 6 months before COVID hit. So she just said, I think this would be a really helpful, you know, there could be a really helpful guidebook in this. And Murdoch Books, their principle is live life well. So it's all about helping people to live good lives. And so I really resonated with that straight away. And I just loved Kelly. We just clicked the minute I met her. And so we sort of, we did a lot of tossing around of ideas, and ultimately ended up coming up with the idea that I was thinking, what were the things that were most helpful to me when I was going through treatment? And really it was the advice of people that had been through really challenging things. So not just cancer, but the loss of a child, or a miscarriage, or a friend of mine had a big mental health breakdown, and she had such wisdom. And a really dear friend of mine, Jenna, had been dealing with really debilitating chronic fatigue for about 15 years. She was one of the first people I reached out to, because I didn't know anyone that had had cancer. We don't even have any family friends that had really had cancer. So I reached out to her and said, I know you've been dealing with something really difficult for 15 years, and I'd love any advice that you've got. And she put some words together for me and sent it down in a little book, and it just was such a helpful thing that I kept going back to. Whereas I got given a lot of books when I first got sick, and they all felt quite dense and heavy and scary, and I didn't even want them in my room, to be honest, let alone engaging with them, because I was scared as to what they might contain, and that it might give me too much information that I wasn't ready for. So really I set about to create the book that I would have loved to have had at the beginning of my curveball, and I wanted to create a book that wasn't just about cancer, but that was about, well, how do you deal with anything that comes that's unexpected? Because really I think, be it grief, be it heartache, be it a miscarriage, be it a mental health crisis, like a lot of the steps are similar, in terms of the acceptance, breaking it down into small steps, finding joy and gratitude in small moments. All these sort of things are sort of relevant no matter what it is you're going through. It's been a pretty magical few weeks, actually, seeing it out in the world and getting messages from people that are just doing it so tough, be it being in lockdown. Like a woman reached out to me the other day, she's in lockdown, lost her husband at the start of the year to cancer, and then she got diagnosed with really aggressive stage 4 breast cancer. People are just doing it so tough, and so to hear that someone say, this book has just given me such light in a dark place, but it's, I really wanted to create something that didn't, whilst it looks really bright and bubbly and happy, it doesn't skim over and be like, just be positive and everything's going to be great. It's not like that at all. No. It's like, I think that the title sums it up, and that's why I rested on that in the end, this idea that, this is tough. This is really tough, and I'm really sorry you have to go through it. There's no rhyme or reason for it. It hasn't happened for a reason, been sent to you because you're one of the strong ones. It's just crap. I'm really sorry. But you also, you have everything inside you that you need to overcome this. and this little book's going to be there cheering you on. And just when you forget and feel like you're going off the path, it's going to help you get back on track. And yeah, that's been really special. And I have had a bunch of people send me photos of them in hospital this week or in chemo with the book, and that's been really, really magical.
And I think that, as you say, it's not a band-aid as such, it's just a moment of remedy that actually gives you hope and joy, and also a sprinkle of fairy dust to realise that, there are other people that also are going through a similar, if not different, but similar experience. I do want to go back to the book for a moment, because I started today with saying, everyone has a book in them, and I can see some of you sitting there going, right.
I agree.
So we just need to do a video and get it to Mamamia, and then we're going to have a book, actual publishing house phone us. That is a diamond in the rough, because that very rarely happens, and obviously was meant to happen for you. And I think that we've talked about as well that you can look back on your journey and it seems to make sense, but when you're looking forward, it doesn't, or the dots don't always come together.
Yeah.
But of course it makes sense because of the history that you had, because of this innate ability to actually connect with people. Yes, primarily through video and through the on-live screen, but they saw something in you. They knew that their readers would garner great value from, and obviously they're a publishing house, they want to sell books.
Yeah.
That's part of it. But I think, when you consider publishing houses, particularly during the last 2 years, I mean, people have been at home, what do you think they've been doing? Here's the time to write a book, right? We'll all get our books out and we think they're fantastic, and our friends and family tell us they're fantastic after 2 gin and tonics, because it's the only time they can actually tell a little white lie, is that they're then sent off. And so there are manuscripts that are actually literally taking over desks in publishing houses of those that believe they have a book in them. So to make it from creating, deciding, writing, the illustrations, the covers, the titles, to actually receiving it in a cardboard box and going, wow, this is what I created, is quite rare indeed. And I think that people are wanting to actually read these types of books now. So it is the perfect time for you. Moving forward, I want to ask probably how you are. I think everyone, because I can ask and then no one else has to ask, right? Because we're doing group therapy here this evening. But how
Group
are
therapy,
you?
I like that.
People are, they believe now, okay, you've done that, so that was almost part of your journey. Do you ever get worried that something will come back, that if you're not feeling perfect in one day, that, life may not be those generations ahead you're looking at?
Yeah, I mean, it's something I did worry about a lot when I was first out of chemo, and I think that's very common for cancer survivors. And I spoke to a beautiful friend of mine. She founded this company called Bravery Co, and they make these gorgeous headscarves for women going through cancer. And she just said to me, because her cancer actually did come back and it relapsed, and then she got a sarcoma after the fact. And she said to me, you know what, your cancer might come back or it might not. And whether or not you worry about it is not going to change that. And that was a really big mind shift moment for me, where I went, oh yeah, okay, I'm not going to worry about it then. I'm just going to, keep across my symptoms and do my routine checkups that I'd have to do every 6 months now, not 3. But other than that, I'm not going to think about it, because it's just boring and it's such a waste of energy, And our beautiful family friend, Gary Wield, who did actually sadly pass away from lymphoma about 5 or 6 years ago, he used to, and I write about it in the book, he always operated from the view that if you worry about something and then it happens, then you've done double the worrying. And if you don't worry, just wait, I'm stuffing this up, aren't I? But if you worry basically and it doesn't happen, then you wasted the worry. And if you worry and it does happen, then you've done double the worry. So as hard as it can be, best not to worry. And so, I know I feel very grateful to be here. I feel grateful to live in a country where I could go, have full cancer treatment and it didn't cost me a dime other than, some medications and things. In America, the #1 cause of bankruptcy is healthcare. Yeah. It's horrendous. And yet we are seeing cuts to Medicare. We're seeing these sort of things taken away. So I think these are freedoms that we can't take for granted, and we, as a community, we need to say, what kind of community do we want to be, and I want to be part of a community that when people are unwell and at their lowest points that we lift them up and we look after them, you know, because, you know, having to do chemo or any kind of awful health treatment and then be stressing about finances and, you know, it's just, that's not the sort of community I want to, you know, be a part of. So, yeah, and I mean, for me personally, I'm dealing with chronic fatigue, so that's quite common for a lot of cancer survivors. It's a bit of a pain, like, you know, tonight I will, probably tomorrow I'll need to like rest for as much of the day as I can because I feel the nausea start to come on and the neck pain. But yeah, like, and on that, I would just say a little tip for everyone in the audience, if you are feeling unwell for an extended period of time, don't wear makeup when you go to the doctor, and don't for the women and some of the gents perhaps. But don't wear bronzer, don't wear makeup, don't have a spray tan because it just gives an illusion of good health, and I think it's quite confusing for medical professionals. I had a girlfriend the other day. She went to the doctor. She just had a spray tan, and he said, "What's someone so well doing in my office?" And she had a blood test, and she was severely anemic. So it just goes to show. You know, on that note, anyway.
Talking about being well and resting, your idea of resting and our idea of resting are probably worlds apart.
Yes.
Resting for us after a long day at the office, for example, might be watching TV, it might be chopping the onions before dinner, it might be reading a story to the kids of a night time or our grandkids. But for you, I think this is a great learning for us all. It's one of my main learnings from today. What does resting mean to you? Right?
Yeah, well, with my chronic fatigue, I've been going to a chronic fatigue clinic in Sydney, actually. And they got me to write, which is a really interesting activity to do, but write out every hour what I was doing. And I came back after 2 weeks and showed them my schedule. And they said, "So you don't rest ever?" I was like, "Yes, I do." Like, I was reading a book there and I listened to a podcast there and I was, you know, watched a TV show there. And they said, "Yeah, well, none of those activities are actually resting." And I was like, "Well, what is resting?" Then, you know, because I think, well, you know, especially in an age where we're connected we're on our devices every 2 minutes, we fill all the gaps, don't we, where we used to just sit and kind of just be and just stare at the clouds. And they said, yeah, resting is literally getting a cup of tea, staring out the window, and just being. Like, that is resting. Nothing else counts as resting, really, because to listen to a podcast, it's a really high cognitive load still. They said even driving, which you think is maybe a downtime activity between things, is one of the highest cognitive activities you can do for your brain. So that's not restful. But yeah, it's things that I really struggle, to be honest, with it, because it's so easy, isn't it, to grab the phone, quick scroll of Instagram, that's a break. No, it's not. But looking, if you know, going out and just sitting in the garden, watching the trees sway in the breeze, watching the birds, you know, might even, you know, watching some water rush by in a creek or down at the beach, you know, and just letting yourself be off devices and just being. But I mean, how many people do that regularly? Probably not many of us.
I know, I'm feeling relaxed now. I'm kind of like, oh, imagine that. I can see myself by a creek, but it is, isn't it?
Audiobook coming soon.
And most people weren't born on the Gold Coast and they chose to come here for lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so then when we talk about lifestyle and what is it, and you would even say that walking on the beach is a joyful activity depending if you're in the hard sand or the soft sand, but in doing so, you're actually still doing something. So it's this just peaceful being, and that to me is a great lesson, because I'd kind of go, I watch TV when I go home and I'm giving myself a brain dump and doing that, thinking that. So we were able to learn all that today from you as well.
And the other thing is doing multiple things at once. So when I clean the house, I'm listening to a podcast. If I'm driving, I'm probably listening to something or speaking to mum. And they've helped me understand as well that, like, it's just such an overload. So if you are feeling tired and exhausted, I'd really recommend just pulling back to one activity at a time and finding, even if it's just a 5 minute, you know, 2 5-minute slots in your day where you can just be, phone away, you know, no TV, no nothing, and just be. It's really, you can sort of feel your body just be like, oh, we haven't done this since we were a kid.
But we did it, didn't we? And for those who are over 40 in the room, you would lie on the grass and actually look at the clouds and imagine animals or whatever it happened to be. And now kids are like, you know, literally on their iPhones the whole time. And by the way, so many of us as well, I watch television, and I'm also, and many women particularly, on 2 devices. We actually think we're quite groovy by doing it. Is I'm looking at Facebook and watching a TV program and waiting for dinner to boil. So we're kind of doing these other jobs, and we're busier than ever before, which means we're actually not listening to our body. Either, because we're so busy outward, we're not actually focused inward. Talking about inward, I want to ask, because you look sensational.
Oh,
so you look so well, and your hair looks spectacular.
Oh, thank you. A hair compliment is very important to me these days.
But your hair looks great. But I wanted to ask, for many of us that are now thinking, what am I eating? Am I living the life I should be? Is there a chance I'm going to get ill? Have you had to change, or chosen, I probably should say, chosen to change much about your intake, or, you know, yes, you're resting more now, or aiming to?
Yeah.
So there are things that have been forced upon you in some ways because your world has changed. But internally, do you kind of still go out and get the cheesels in the car park and sit there and have a few? Did you ever do that?
I mean, I think what shocked so many of my friends when I got diagnosed was that I was one of the healthiest people they knew. I love squash randomly. I was playing squash a few times a week, which was getting worse and worse. I was playing touch football. You know, I thought I ate really well and healthily, but actually, Mum and Dad and myself, we've all been on a bit of a plant-based journey over this past year, the more we've read and researched. So 2 fabulous books I'd recommend: How Not to Die, which is a great title, and The Proof is in the Plants. And they're 2 books about, you know, having a predominantly plant-based or fully plant-based diet. So that's something we've really gotten into. And I just found cutting out dairy, and, you know, we know that red meat is a carcinogenic substance, right? The Cancer Council has listed red meat as so processed meats like bacon and ham and all those delicious things, Frankfurts, you know, as a grade 1 carcinogen, which means they cause cancer. And yet we're like, but they're delicious. I'm like, yeah, sure, have it once a year or something. But, you know, and we know that, you know, same with red meat. So yeah, that's been a bit of a journey that we've been on as a family, and I'm really proud of my parents who've actually been driving it and instigating it, Mum particularly with her amazing cooking, you know, to go from being like, oh, you know, you've got to have meat in your diet, to going, oh, actually we can, you know, and I've just been really impressed by them to be so open to it, you know, and
because
change.
it's not just one person, is it? And I think this is any experience, whether it's mental health issues, and as most of us know, we're going to be seeing incredible growth with what's happened in the last couple of years as to our young people, but also elderly people, also those people who live on their own in silos, as I like to call it, that are insulated from life, that are trying to manage the best they can and doing it by screens at the moment, many of them. But in the change of life as well, when we look at that, we all need to make significant changes, don't we? And so what are those choices we decide? And for many people, they won't choose unless it's forced upon them.
Yeah.
And so for your parents to actually undertake that as a group and to actually take it on is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, they're pretty impressive.
I know, they're here, and your dad's had the video all night, which I love, because he's probably going to have carpal tunnel or whatever it's called after holding that video camera for the evening. But for you, what is next? So now you're an author. Can you believe it?
Yeah, no. I got really emotional today seeing my book in the library with like the barcode on it and the laminated cover. I was like, oh, it's a real library book. That was really exciting. And this was my library that I would come to growing up. I mean, I used to go to the Mudgeerbar Library, and then it moved to the post office, as some of you will remember, but now this is our library, this beautiful library. But yeah, I mean, I'm chatting with my publisher about writing another book. And so yeah, I just loved writing the first one so much. And I do believe that everyone does have a book in them. So if you feel you do, definitely follow that. And yeah, so I want to keep writing and speaking and just connecting with people and, you know, making content that connects.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then I think, you know, this whole experience, I've spent a lot of time reflecting on the way we treat our bodies.
Yes.
And also how that's reflected in a macro sense of the way we treat our planet, you know, like we have this very extractive model at the moment. It's like, how much can we squeeze out of our bodies, out of our planet, you know, get as much bang for our buck, and nothing is in balance. And, you know, we're seeing what that's doing to our climate. We're seeing what that's doing to communities. You know, look what's happening in Greece at the moment with the wildfires. You know, we've had the worst fires in recorded history here in Australia. Like, you know, we need to move to a place of more balance. And I think also, you know, I think that's often painted as a really doomy, gloomy, we've got to sacrifice things and lose things to move to that future. But actually, I think that future is really exciting. And, you know, imagine a country where we're all driving around in silent electric vehicles in the future and we're not breathing in toxic fumes. Like, that's an exciting thing. That's not a stressful thing. But, you know, we need big shifts underway, which I feel are happening and are underway. And, you know, when you see young people rising up all around the world, they're pretty inspiring, you know.
But if I asked you about the big shift in this mind shift, I mean, choosing a change in diet is a big thing to undertake, particularly if you're going out to dinner, you're catching up with friends, but you've undertaken that, and I'd say 95% of the time you're able to manage it and stick to it, and yet you're joyful in that choice.
Yeah.
So I think it's the way we see things as well. It's that mindset, and it's actually that just moving it slightly is to say, I will make the most of this experience. And certainly I think all those that know you in the room tonight, and we're so proud that you know your Gold Coast as such, and to know your primary school teachers just over there, bringing up another generation of beautiful Gold Coasters.
Teachers are the best.
But we never know what they'll do. And look at you, like you began out hoping you'd be the Prime Minister. You know? And no, that's right, there is still time. And then moving through the different opportunities you've had, every place has served you to be seated where you are now. So now I want to ask one thing before we go, because this is a public moment, but if you wouldn't mind sharing with us, the gift your mum and dad have given you. Of the support, of the love, of the taking you in, of being right here on the journey. I'd like to finish tonight with what that means to you.
Yeah, well, you know, it's a pretty humbling experience, I suppose, when you're living an independent life and you're an independent young woman and you're living in the big smoke and, you know, you're forced to totally surrender and totally just lean on your people. And I met a girl early on who was a friend from squash who had a brain tumour and I'd never known, and she confided in me that that was something that she'd been dealing with for many years. And she said, I just want to let you know, like, you just got to lean on your people at this time. It will feel uncomfortable, but they really want to help and they really want to get you through this. And I was just so fortunate that I had such an amazing support crew to lean on. And Mum and Dad were just, you've been extraordinary taking me through it, and as were my sisters, Molly and Rihanna. And yeah, my whole sort of community. And I think, I just feel incredibly grateful for that, because not everyone has that when they're going through tough times. And so I think it's just a good reminder that any little act of kindness you can give for anyone going through a tough time, a small, you know, there's that great Oscar Wilde phrase, and it just says, the smallest deed is worth more than the greatest, you know, intention. So it's like, just do something little. And, you know, at the moment with friends in lockdown, that might be as simple as sending them a voice message. If you don't know how to do it, find me after and I'll show you. It's really simple and easy. But like, I've been sending them to people lately and they're like, I didn't ever think to send a voice message, and it's so much nicer than getting a text message. It's also way easier and less time to do. Or a video, you know, film a video and send it if you've got a smartphone. Or I've actually got a playlist of really upbeat songs that I've got to go with the book. You can find it on my website. And people have been sending it left, right and centre. You know, make a playlist of fun songs for someone, or just send them a funny video, or, you know, there's simple things you can do that don't cost anything, that are really quick and simple to do, and just all those little things do help. Yeah.
And I think it is the little things, and the beauty of your book is you can touch point those little things. You can read it in one session. You can borrow it from the library and make sure you bring it back. But very importantly, that you can gift it on to someone as well. And I know I bought copies today to send to my nieces in Melbourne and some of my family members, just without saying you need this or I think you need it, and saying this is what I think is good for you, is just saying thought you might love some of these pages. So we're not telling them what to do because we're not living their experience. And I think that we all need a Bible. we all need a go-to at times in our lives, and this is the perfect pitch for this moment in our time for so many of us, no matter what the experience or the challenge happens to be. So tonight I know that you're here signing books, and books are available as well, of course, through the library. I think they're back-ordered now through the library as well,
great.
but you can purchase them tonight as a very privileged price at $29.95, and Briony will be here and she'll be able to have a little chat with you if you'd like a photograph or you'd like to share a little bit about your journey this evening. I know that you're going to stay for a little bit longer to be able to share that intimate time with our beautiful guests this evening.
Yes, and thank you so much to all of you for coming and spending this time. Like as you said at the start of the night, I really appreciate what a privileged position we're in to be able to do an event like this where, you know, most of the country can't at the moment. So it's really special to share this time with you. And a huge thanks to Danielle who made the whole night happen, and Danny and Ethan and Sue from the library team, and to you, Karen, for such a beautiful interview and just making such a gorgeous space, and for your insightful questions, and making it a really beautiful experience for me. So thank you.
Oh, well, we're honoured and privileged to have you here and to have the library open after hours.
Go wild.
I know we are being wild, aren't we? But, you know, I love the fact that I believe the library is the fabric of our community. So to be able to bring our beautiful Gold Coasters in tonight to hear the story behind the pages gives us an insight into why it was written, what it means, and as I say, the fairy dust that it can produce for those who read it. So thank you so much, and please give a round of applause to Briony for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
And now, of course, Briony will head over to the signing table, the author signing table, and certainly answer any questions that you have. But thank you for joining us today. Of course, head to the website to look at what's coming up next. And very importantly, we put these events on the City of Gold Coast Libraries to support Gold Coasters across the community. And so filling out, there's a little pencil, it should be unless you're sitting on it, but there should have been a pencil on your chair. We'd love you to fill out the actual little event evaluation form. It's a library. Usually they're 1 to 5, but we're a library, so it's 1 to 10. 10 being the best. Is to share any ideas. I wrote champagne on mine earlier this afternoon. We should have champagne. I don't know if that's legal, but that'd be nice. Or cups of tea and scones and scones. I've got an extra one here if you need it. But if you could just leave those on your chair or pass them over to one of our team members, that would be lovely. But look online for the next upcoming events, because as I say, we are one of the few libraries in Australia and library groups across the city that can hold events at the moment. So we hope to see you at many more in the coming weeks and months. And take care, and thank you so much for joining us this evening.
And if everyone's happy, because, you know, I'm a documentarian, as we know, get a quick photo. We'll get us in the... you leaning, Karen, and we can get the crowd in the background.
She's so good.
Smile, smile, everyone.